we're going to be talking about video-based interviewing. Again, my name is Andrew with the K-State Career Center. So before we just exclusively then jump into the tips for jobs, or sorry, the tips for online interviews, I did want to just quickly put one slide about quick tips for job searching. What I have found tremendous success with lately, especially for my students and particularly my graduate students, is using LinkedIn as a way to identify opportunities. Within kind of the fast pace changes and adaptations that COVID and the pandemic brought us, we found that a lot of companies were looking for talent immediately or as soon as possible. And so sometimes the positions didn't even necessarily get posted in the normal job posting channels, like on their websites or even on like Indeed. A lot of what we saw was opportunities being popped up and just being shared across networks. That was really, really beneficial over the past year. And so we really turned to LinkedIn as a major tool for us to be able to identify some of these opportunities. Now, a couple quick tips about LinkedIn specifically is, of course, LinkedIn, if you're not familiar with it, it's basically a social media tool, but that's really geared towards our professional lives, our professional development. And so, we're not really sharing cute pictures of our cats or our kids on LinkedIn. It's mainly professional. So just like, Facebook or Instagram, when you go to LinkedIn, you get like a main feed that just is kind of like all your connections and whatever everyone's posting and talking about and all that good stuff. Well, you can actually go at the very top of LinkedIn, there's a search bar. You can actually click hiring, and then you can filter your search by just posts that mention hiring. And so then you really then are only getting those posts that are actively hiring for people, that are actively looking to match opportunities with talent. You can even filter by industry areas. And so I just did a quick screenshot a little bit ago about how you can type in hiring, filter by just posts, and then filter by industry level. And even with those specific criteria, I still had 492 results pop up for my feed. So that's a really, really good tip. The next thing is just using LinkedIn to identify companies. Maybe you've been hearing a lot of news about this company, or in your field, these are kind of the main companies to watch or to work for. And so by all means, find them on LinkedIn, follow them. Usually all organization or company pages on LinkedIn, once you find their main page, there's all these tabs, and one of those tabs is a people tab. And so you can click people, and then all the individuals who identify themselves working with or working for that company show up. And so you can actually see who's all working there. Maybe you have someone who already works there that you forgot, like, oh yeah, I forgot she works there. I forgot he works there. I forgot they work there. Things like that. The LinkedIn Alumni Search tool, very, very powerful tool. So on the screenshot, I typed in hiring. Instead of hiring, you would type in Kansas State University. K-State's main page pops up. But what is specific to institutions, colleges, universities, is that you're actually able to, instead of searching people, you can actually search alumni and filter them by what they studied, where they live, who they work for. It's great, great, great to identify people in your network or people who should be getting in your network. One of the other big questions I get about LinkedIn is, should I connect with these people? If I do connect with them, what do I say? Things like that. The biggest thing is, if you connect with someone, it gives you the option to send a message with the request. Always send a message, but really that message should be focused on explaining the why. Why are you reaching out to them? Why do you have a common connection or link with them? Are you both alums of K-State? Do you both know Jolene from, where we both grew up? Explain the why. Why should they care? And honestly, when students request to be friends with me, either I know them right away or they tell me, Andrew, I was in one of your presentations, that's great. But let's say a random person adds me and I have no idea who they are, our industries don't match. So I will actually reach out to that contact and say, hey, it's great to have a connection with you. Could you remind me where our paths might have crossed before, or how you think this connection could be mutually beneficial? I challenge my connections, because I think one common misconception of LinkedIn is that it's just the number of connections you have. It's the number of people that you can put, that you can connect with. And it should not be the case. You should have authentic, genuine connections with your LinkedIn connections. There should be a why. There should be a very big reason why for all the connections that you have on LinkedIn. So I could talk for an hour about LinkedIn, but I won't. The next thing I'll say is, outside of LinkedIn, just whatever other areas or programs you're using to look for jobs. So whether that be, you know, our own Handshake platform that there is the job database in that you all have free access to. It might be Indeed.com. It might be Monster.com. Just set the filters of what you're looking for and subscribe to new position or opportunity alerts. One thing I do want to say is beware of remote. A lot of these big job databases have, since the pandemic, have added a remote or virtual work kind of button or filter. You need to be very careful and read job descriptions very, very carefully for those, because some of them are truly remote, virtual, 100%, where others will say in the job description, remote temporarily until May, or until we get back to the office. Like, they're not planning to stay remote or virtual forever. So really be specific and pay attention to that. The last thing for job searching I want to just mention is tap into your own networks that you have. Think to your professors, think to your PIs, think to, you know, conference colleagues that you may have met. Consider your professional organizations that you're a part of. Basically, any nationally affiliated or organized professional organization will have some type of a job database or job board or career center associated with it or component with it. So definitely tap into your network, definitely tap into your professional organizations. Okay, that's all I'm going to say about general job searching. Now let's hop into the actual virtual and virtual interviews. So someone asked the question of, what's different, Andrew? What's different, you know, as we prepare for in-person interviews, what's different for virtual interviews? Well, it starts the same. You want to do your research. You want to do your homework. So looking for information about the company history, their culture, their mission, where they're all located, any news or highlights about them. You just want to have a really good general understanding of what's happening or where they might have popped up in the news in the past. So that part has not changed. For some of you, you might also be wondering, you know, or paying specific attention to how did they fare during the pandemic? You know, did they lose business? Did they gain business? Are they rapidly hiring because they identified a need in the market, etc.? So what's happening with them as a result or after the pandemic? I know we're still in it, obviously. The next thing about being prepared, though, that might be a little bit different is you need to be prepared when things might not go as planned. We know internet connections are not 110% reliable all the time. We know that even if we're good on our end, they may not be good on their end, etc. Things might be blocked, cameras might be shut off. So always have some type of a backup plan ready and prepared. Or when you're scheduling the interview with the company, ask, you know, if we get disconnected or, you know, if something happens during the interview, what should the process be? Should I reach out to you? Are you going to reach back out to me? If I am supposed to reach back out to you, who should I contact? Do you have a phone number that I can call? Just establish what could happen or what you would do if something would happen that would be totally, you know, not planned. The next thing is practice your frequently asked questions. So kind of those common questions that we all anticipate getting. You know, tell me about a time when, describe a situation when. Tell us about your experience with this. So we all know kind of the basic questions that they're going to probably be asking us. And so think through them. At the bottom, it says, check out the K-State Career Center Resume and Interview Guide. We have in the back of our Resume and Interview Guide, there's 3 whole pages just of common interview questions that you can practice with, but just practice saying them. Say them in front of a mirror, talk through them so that they flow really well. The other thing is obviously have something ready to take notes with. We'll talk more about the importance of that later, but always have something by you in order to take notes with. And of course, like I already mentioned, the Resume and Interview Guide to help prep you, but of course, I am available to meet with any of you as many times as you would like to talk about your resume, your CV, your cover letter, your diversity statement, teaching statement, research statement, mock interviews, salary negotiation. I am here for all of those things completely free. So definitely reach out to me or anyone at the Career Center to help you through that. Okay, now we talked about how do we prepare? How do we prepare for things that aren't planned, the unexpected? I think everyone's a little familiar with this clip, hopefully. Reporter reporting, kids pop in, nanny pops in, it's chaos. He keeps his cool, he keeps going, he's on national television. We never know what's going to happen, right? We never know, but we can work and try to do as many things possible to completely get rid of those things so that we don't have to experience this. So we need to find that optimal environment or optimize your current environment. Got a chat. That's a mom, not a nanny. What a moment. Exactly. I know. It's crazy. But how can we optimize the environment? Well, the first thing is you should have some idea of what type of software or programming you will be using. And so if you don't, ask them when you're scheduling the interview, will this be over Zoom? Will this be over Skype, Microsoft Teams, things like that? A lot of times for all of these software, usually they have some type of test page that you can log into beforehand that you can actually then test your equipment, test your sound, test your bandwidth and everything like that. So there are ways you can prepare for that. Minimize distractions. If you have roommates, tell them, hey, I'll buy you coffee at Radina's or Pool House somewhere if you leave for this time. Pets, try to find alternative plans or accommodation for pets. Yeah, we've all had our pet moments, those of us who are pet owners lately. Lighting. Try to not sit behind windows. If there are windows, try to make sure that they're in front of you, not behind you, to work with the exposure, glare, things like that. Background and clutter. Make sure that whatever space you have is appropriate. I can't tell you the number of appointments that I've had with students that have had questionable things in their backgrounds, or I've had other appointments with students where they had roommates and they were in very close quarters or in close proximity with the roommates, and so the roommate was getting out of the shower at one point and walking by, and it was just, there's just a lot of things that can happen. So the more planning ahead, the more efforts you can put into that optimal environment is going to be great. The last little tip there is reserve an interview space at the Career Center. So remember, here in the Career Center, in the Bernie Family Welcome Center, we have a lot of interview rooms that are available for all students to be able to reserve for free. If you don't have technology, we will provide a laptop for you. If you need a landline phone to call, we will provide a landline phone for you. So that is all free and available to you here at the Career Center. So don't forget about that. There's a Qualtrics form on our website. I can show you that later if you'd like. So that's all about, optimizing your environment. Next thing is to be engaging. Someone said, again, how do we prepare for in-person, or how do we prepare for online versus in-person? The thing is, though, you really need to keep that same energy, that same appearance, that same overall image going that you would have in an in-person. So dress for success. Oh, I'm getting ahead of myself. Keep that eye contact, the tone, your body language. So you can tell that I talk with my hands a lot. And so that's just something that naturally comes to me. So I do that. But the eye contact, for instance, I'm using an external camera, and so it lives on top of my monitor. So, you know, over the past year, I've gotten used to actually looking at the camera versus looking at my screen, which, you know, there's two different focuses for that. So really focus so you can maintain that eye contact with your interviewers. Gather or compile the key experiences or the main things that you want to be sure that no matter what question is asked in this interview, I want to make sure that they know about this. A lot of times I also talk about using a sticky note or a post-it note, you know, a small thing that sticks here. You can put this right beside your webcam and tack it up there so that it's in your peripheral vision, so you can easily kind of see, okay, that says programming. Make sure I mention my programming experiences. So that little note can be right up there the whole time, and they won't know that. So it's essentially a cheat sheet of keywords that will help you remember the stories or the experiences that you want to share with them. Going back to look, you want to look professional. I know a lot of people think that in this age of virtual interviewing that you only need to dress from the top up. I don't agree with that at all. I say from the head to the toes, you should be dressed appropriately. We know, and science has backed it up, that we will perform more professionally if we feel more professional. And so if we just do the top up, that's only 50% professional. We want to be 110% professional. So make sure you are practicing and preparing what you're going to wear. And another quick shout out, the Career Center, we have our career closet, free professional clothing for all students. You can take up to 3 items per week. You never return anything. You never pay for anything. It is all yours to keep. And so definitely please come and check us out. We are open for the career closet here in the Welcome Center. And the last thing I'll say about just being engaging is just feed off of the energy that you're getting, or follow their energy, the interviewer's energy. You know, hopefully they are upbeat. Hopefully they're very inquisitive and wanting to know about certain things either found on your resume or your CV or things that you're sharing with them. And so as you can kind of tell, you know, their body language or their expressions or even the pitch of their voice, if you can tell that they're very interested in something, quickly, you know, reach down and make a quick note, like they were really interested when I talked about dressing nicely. You know, that's what I would write down. But that can be really helpful then when we negotiate, when we do our follow-up, is recalling some of those things that they were really impressed with or seemed really impressed, because that can be very powerful for us in the aftermath or following it. So be engaging. So now, you always want to have, I tell my students to always have at least 3 questions to ask the interviewers. And I know some people ask about the academic job search. I would again recommend at least 3 specific questions for each part of your academic interview, because, you know, you might have questions that would just be asked of the dean, might have questions just to be asked of a department head, of the team, of your colleagues you'll be working for. So I will say have at least 3 to ask for each section if it's going to be broken up like that. The other thing about the questions that you're going to ask them is make sure they're not common questions or quote unquote Googleable questions. That's a word I made up. So please do not ask them, where do you all have locations at? What is your big project right now? Like, these are all things that should be able to be found with a quick Google search. So don't quote unquote waste a question by asking something like that. So really focus on what is important to you. This is your time to ask those key questions and considerations that, you know, could make you lean one way or another. So one of the top ones is, what does training or onboarding look like at your company in this world of the global pandemic? Will I be onboarded virtually? Will I come into the office to be onboarded and then go back home? What does that look like? At all times, though, it should be what is important to you to know. So workplace culture, it could be a question about that. It could be, do you have any employee resource groups or knowledge groups focused on, any type of identity group that you identify with? You can ask them about that. You could say, what does lunch look like here? What does everyone do for lunch? That can be very telling of workplace culture. What are your remote work policies in the wake of the pandemic? Have you implemented or edited any of your remote work policies? That could be a question if they're more apt to follow that. If it's a completely specific industry that remote just doesn't work, don't ask that question. Use common sense with that question too. Another one is, how does your company get involved in the community? How do you give back to the community? That can again be tied to workplace culture. So there's some really good questions to ask, but always have something to ask them. One of my favorite ones that I have my students ask is, if I were to be the successful candidate, what would be one of the first projects or one of the first things I would be working on? I like that question because it doesn't just ask, what does a typical workday look like? What do you like best about your job? It focuses on me as the candidate. It sees myself in your position. And if I am to be the successful candidate, what would be the first project I would be working on? And it's really impactful. It's really interesting to hear their response. The other one that you should never leave an interview without either being told or asking is, what are the next steps? When should I expect to hear something back from you? You should never leave an interview without knowing the answer to that. That's really, 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 really important right now. So there's that. And finally, the follow-up. Always, always, always follow up after an interview. Because this is all, virtually, because a lot of things are happening via email, and email follow-up is okay. Maybe even 3 years ago, I maybe would have said, no, it always has to be a written thank you or a written follow-up. I'm more lenient now. The world's more lenient now. I say a follow-up email is fine, but send it to the contacts, send it to the new people that you met. When you write a message, again, look through your notes and recall what was shared with you. Recall something you learned, recall some achievements that you didn't find on their website or online that, they just shared with you internally or something like that. But at all times in that communication, you want to be sure that you are maintaining your excitement for the position and for the opportunity to work for them or with them. Always leave, I look forward to hearing back from you and hearing more and being kept up to date throughout the hiring process or something like that. Just continue to show that excitement even after the interview, for sure. So follow up is very important. Okay, so like I said, I wanted to keep that very, very general, very open. These were some additional questions that I was asked about. So one of them was about if you're pursuing a job in academia, are interviews for faculty or even staff, are those still happening in person or virtual? Both. I've seen both. Some are still flying people in to do their in-person process. Others are doing virtual. So it's really varied for sure. OPT H-1B questions. I have a whole hour-long presentation about the international job search with OPT and H-1B considerations. So that's very specific to some people. I'm more than happy to talk with you about that. Reach out to me. We can schedule an appointment and specifically talk about what you're thinking or your situation. Another question that was on the document talked about weakness questions. So we always get, tell us about one of your weaknesses, or describe one of your weaknesses for us, or what do you feel would be a weakness that you would have coming into this position? It's, you know, we always love how they ask us about our weaknesses, but I always tell my students to reframe that question in your mind. So instead of tell us about a weakness, I tell my students to hear it as, tell us about a skill that you would like to develop more. Think of it that way. What is a skill that you already have or already know how to do, but you want to get better at it? That is really how I train my students to answer that weakness question. Because yeah, I do this okay, but I want to do it better. And so that's really how I work on it. It could be, I don't know, it could be anything. It could be, you know, your facilitation skills. It could be your public speaking skills. Whatever you answer for a weakness question, you want to mention it, but then jump right to how are you currently working to improve that? Or what are you taking part of, or what experiences are you doing now that are strengthening that so that it's not going to be a weakness in the future? Always share that action plan that you have for that weakness question. The last one that I picked out of the questions was Zoom fatigue. Someone asked me particularly about a academic job search. You know, academic job interviews go an entire day, or at least a half a day, and you have meeting and this meeting and this meeting and this meeting. Practice, you know, maybe for the first session you want to be standing, so you set your computer up so that you can stand and do that. Then maybe the longer panel interview session you want to be sitting. So really change things of, you know, maybe this one session is maybe only gonna be 20 minutes to 30 minutes. So stand, you know, or figure out another position that you could be in. Look at your posture. Can your legs be propped up on something for part of it? You know, really trying to do that. The next thing is kind of have a triage station set up to you. So out of eye view, but maybe to the left or right of you, have water, have a cough drop, have a mint, have something, you know, have some face spray to wake you up a little bit, something that will make you happy, a quick little snack or something, because there will be transition times where you will be able to shut off your camera and have, you know, even a few seconds to yourself. So there are ways to work through that for sure. So those are some of the additional questions, but I'm going to stop my share of the presentation, and I'm going to get back to all of you and all of these amazing squares with your names on them. And I'm going to now open it up for additional questions. Or what are you thinking? Did anything, you know, get flowing in your mind after we quickly went through the presentation?
Yesterday I got in fact it's last Friday, I got an interview over the telephone.
Great.
And it was a meeting, and there were 4 people in a board. And the director's voice was somehow shaking in the background. So I had to ask her to repeat several times. I think that ruins it. What do you think?
I mean, it might have, but Helena, it's not your fault. I mean, if it was coming from there and there was literally nothing else that you could do, you know? So, I mean, there's give and take, but you have to have grace with yourself and forgiveness with yourself. Like, you did the best you could do. It was just totally on their end. But you bring up a really good point that I didn't point out, though, was that, you know, if any time you handled it exactly correct, is if at any time you don't understand them or you need more time, ask for it. The interviewers would much rather you say, I'm sorry, I'm having a little bit of issues hearing you. I think maybe the connectivity isn't good. Could you repeat that question, or could you type that question in the chat so I fully make sure that I'm getting the full question? That is absolutely okay. Maybe they do ask a question that you heard correctly, but you just need more time to think about it. So just say, that's a really great question. Do you care if I have just a minute or two just to quickly write this down and kind of think a little bit more about it? That's fine too if you need more time. So give yourself that opportunity and the permission to ask for those things. Absolutely.
I see. What about the questions I have to ask for them? Like they always ask me, yeah, you have time to ask questions now.
Mm-hmm.
So what makes it interesting for them about those questions?
Wow, that's a great question. What makes it interesting to them? I think any time that you can give feedback to them, like incorporate their work into a question, like, I saw that you recently won this award, or I see that you were recently recognized for this. Could you tell me how, you know, this position intersects with that work? So with that question, you're kind of giving them a compliment, but at the same time, you're asking them a question specifically about your position.
I see. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. Those were great questions. Thank you. Nick, you have your hand raised. Do you have something? Oh, you're on mute. Story of our lives.
Sorry about that.
You're okay.
Hi there. Thank you again for another great presentation.
Sure,
I just wanted to know, do you have any opinion on using headphones during interviews? If we should, if we shouldn't, if it looks good, if it looks bad, or anything like that?
I say go with what you sound the best on. If you sound and you can hear the best on headphones, by all means, use headphones. Some people like to use earbuds because they think it makes them look cool, but they can also still really hear well. Great, use earbuds. You know, do whatever is going to be most beneficial to you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. I think I had a chat down here. Chris. Yeah, the weakness perspective. Yeah. Yep, exactly. I always go for that. Instead of what's a weakness, what is a skill that you'd like to develop more or improve? Absolutely. What else? There's 35 of you here. There has to be some more questions.
Hi, Andrew.
Hey, Ravi.
My question is, in interview, it happens sometime the people who are in the interview panel, they are not from your background. So they just ask, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, yeah. Can you say it one more time though? I'm sorry.
Okay. Sometimes it happens if interviewer is not from your background, and if you want to converse it with them, how can you make it?
If they're not from your background. So so you're saying like it's just a general HR person and not really specific to your work.
In some of the cases, like the interview is held by the entire committee. So the entire committee will take the interview one by one.
Right.
So how we should continue the conversation when the interviewer not belongs to your background?
Well, I mean, I think when we consider hiring committees, a lot of times they're strategically diverse. They're strategically made so that, you know, it isn't just all people from that office. Hopefully there's maybe someone from an outside office or a stakeholder or a client that they have. And so they want to make sure, I mean, I think this is more and more the reality of jobs is that they want really well-rounded candidates. And a lot of times what grad students in particularly will come up to me and say is, Andrew, I meet all the requirements. Why wouldn't they hire me? Like, why wouldn't they hire me is what they say. And it's like, yes, that's great. You met the requirements. Probably so did 500 other people. So, you know, what else will they consider? How you interact with the other members of the committee. For academic job interviews, how did you interact presenting? You know, maybe you did a presentation in front of students. How did you relate and interact with the students? So at all times, you just really need to find the commonalities that you may or may not have. So talking about the geographic location, that is totally not related to the discipline, but let's say it's in Colorado, talk about the mountains, talk about, you know, past vacations there, or that you're really looking forward to a new terrain or a new landscape, or it doesn't always have to be focused on the job. It could be, what are some good things to do in this community or in this town, things like that. It can be more small talk. During the interview, those questions are still going to be very specific to the position, and so you should hopefully still have an appropriate answer to those. I think the maybe trouble or difficulty comes in when it's more kind of not in interview mode. It's kind of more of that general conversation. So I mean, we can talk about strategy all the time for sure, but that's kind of my quick thoughts on that. I think we got a thing here. Okay, Justin, do you think interviews have become more or less formal in the remote environment? Interesting. More or less formal in the remote environment. I'm going to switch that around, Justin, and I'm going to talk about genuine. Have interviews become more or less genuine in the remote environment? And I honestly say, well, I can go both ways. So I think a little bit more genuine in the fact that they can actually see you in your own environment. They can see you kind of based off of where you're at. And maybe sometimes you do strategically put something in the background to make an interest. I mean, I obviously didn't do that. I have Clorox wipes back there, but maybe you do have some type of thing there. But as far as the other side of it, them not being genuine, is a lot of companies are now doing these automatic video interviews where they send you a link and you are read the interview questions, or you read the interview questions, and then you have, 30 seconds to a minute to answer the question, and you have to record yourself and hit submit. That is how I think online or virtual interviews are becoming less genuine, and it's more kind of a transactional, more of a transactional experience than a transformational experience in terms of interviewing. And I mean, I get that for large companies, they need some way to filter through and to easily get talent through. But at the same time, I don't know, you definitely lose that personal touch. Now, for your specific question, Justin, if I think they're more or less formal, I think they could be less formal. It depends on the industry, but I think even though they're less formal, I think you make a bigger impact by being more formal. So even though, yeah, you are joining from your living room or, from your apartment or dorm, who cares? Still put on that suit, still have your padfolio, still be ready just as if you were in that conference room being interviewed. So despite the scenario, despite the situation we have, still maintaining that level of professionalism and, being formal is always going to be good. That's a good question. What other questions? I love this. We're getting them via video. We're getting them via chat. What else can we talk about?
Andrew, I have a follow-up.
Great, Justin.
For academic positions, since normally you're around the faculty for hours, and you can sort of develop a personal relationship with the faculty to get to know them a little better, do you think that is harder to create now because you don't have that downtime with the other faculty to sort of create a friendship with that might help you in the interview process?
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, that's an interesting perspective because the universities are missing that part just as much as you might be, because a lot of times, when you get called for that in-person on-campus interview, that is their opportunity to woo you. They will take you to the nicest restaurant in town. They will put the best communicators, at that dinner to woo you and get you to really want to come to that place. They'll give you a tour around town. So if you think about it from their perspective, they're losing that opportunity as well. And so, I have heard of some virtual academic interviews still kind of doing this awkward, virtual cocktail hour. We've all experienced, something like that with our professional organizations and our virtual conferences that we've had over the last year. But but yeah, absolutely. You do certainly lose some aspect of that. And I mean, that can be a huge piece of if you get along with your team and what those dynamics look like. And so honestly, if that is going to be something, you know, that's important to you, bring that up, mention that, just be like, you know, I understand that, you know, in a traditional interview format, we normally would have gotten together, or there would have at least been a session for this, you know. Is there any way to try to find a solution so I could, you know, have more one-on-one downtime, you know, with my potential colleagues or something like that? Because yeah, that's a huge, huge component of it. What else, everyone? Online interviews, general job search, career center resources.
I don't want to take up all the questions, but I have another one.
I want you to, Justin, do it.
So this is more a general question. Since a lot of universities, I'm maybe going to ask you from an academic perspective.
Sure.
Since a lot of universities have had more financial straps this past year, do you see that universities are trying to hire more people that are local to their region versus remote because of the cost of an employee to move, say, from Kansas to California or to New York, and it's a big burden on the applicant or candidate?
So your specific question is, are we seeing more positions be filled internally?
Or just local, like, so, like, would someone like Kansas City more likely to hire someone within a smaller area versus hiring someone from California just due to cost of getting a person there?
I mean, maybe a small margin might consider that, but honestly, no, because the job market is so hot right now. Jobs are so competitive right now that, you know, especially in academia, they are not having any shortage of applicants. So no, I don't think so. And I guess the other part of it is too, you know, some more so in industry than academia, but at least in industry, it is kind of more common for there to be like relocation packages, or, you know, some extra money for moving expenses that's part of the general offer, right? For academia, we don't have the money for that, right? Unless you're going to be like this major professor or this, you know, all-star researcher. Otherwise, there's just no money in the fund for anything like that. So from the employer perspective, you know, academia being that employer, it's really not that big of a thing for relocation things. But at the same time, you know, before the pandemic, and I think it still stands true, is a lot of times I tell my students, you don't need to put location on your resume or CV. So just saying, you know, Manhattan, Kansas doesn't have to be anywhere on that document. You could just put your phone number and email, because that's the main reason that they're going to connect with you. And so, for instance, if you are thinking of applying to a company or school in New York City, you know, completely take away that question of, oh, they're in Kansas, you know, why would they be interested? Why are they applying? Like, if you don't put an address, there's less of the probability that they're going to go through that mindset. Yes, they'll probably still see, you know, Kansas State University's in Manhattan, Kansas, but hopefully they'll still more so be focused on your experiences than your geographic location, if that's helpful. There was another question here. Jackie, I have never interviewed for a position where salary is negotiable. Is salary discussion a large part of an interview, or saved for when an offer is extended to you? That's a great question, Jackie. Yes, I would certainly reserve salary negotiation till you actually get that offer. Certainly, I would never, as a candidate, I would never bring up salary in the job interview. However, though, you do need to go into an interview knowing what you're worth, or knowing what you would accept, because it's less common now, because I don't know, it's just not a very good work practice to kind of corner someone or surprise someone with you know, if we were to offer you this today, would you accept a salary of blank? If you have not done your research and don't know what a fair salary is for that position in that geographic location, then no, you don't want to get caught by surprise. So again, I would not bring up salary in a job interview, but I would know what I'm worth, just in the small chance that it does come up in the interview. Now, a lot of times when we're applying, again, more so for industry jobs, on the application, they might ask on the application expected salary or salary range. So they actually kind of get you at the beginning by asking what you are expecting. I always tell my students to give a range if at all possible. If that field lets you put a range, put a range. And so you're not so stamped or stuck to a specific number. Some of them make you actually put in a number, unfortunately. But yeah, and I think, you know, you said I've never interviewed for a position where salary is negotiable. I always encourage my students to negotiate, because a lot of times, again, especially in industry, there is money there. You just have to ask for it. Some companies plan, have a range of, you know, what they're going to offer versus what they could actually offer. So, you know, if any of you ever have any specific questions about how to do salary negotiation or what that looks like, or if we need to practice it, by all means, make an appointment and we will talk about that for sure. Great question.
Hey, Andrew. So you had mentioned the automated interview process. So what are like some tips for success or to stand out through that platform?
So like, okay, like applicant tracking system, things like that?
Yeah,
okay.
you're not actually speaking to a person. But.
Yeah, I mean, really you just have to be on your A game. You just, because of the format, so, you know, you have limited time for one, so you're kind of under pressure from that perspective, but at the same time, you still need to be very professional, composed, and right to the point of what they're asking. Sometimes they don't even let you repeat the question. You know, you hit start and what you say is what you have. So you really have to be very calm, very collected, and answer it right to the point. I mean, again, they're timed, so there's no time to think really hard about a question. You should have something ready to go. And, you know, that takes a lot of practice. And that makes me think of the Career Center. We have a program called Big Interview that we pay for all students to have access to. Let me pull that up while I'm talking here. But Big Interview is essentially what kind of some of those more automated interview styles are, is it actually lets you log in, practice, and record yourself answering some of those questions, and then you can go back and rewatch what you're doing. And I did that direct message. Whoops. There we go. So that's just our general interviewing page. You can, on this page is the link to request a room for video phone interview. So that links to a Qualtrics form that you use to reserve a room here in the Welcome Center to have that interview space, like I mentioned before. But what I wanted to do is go to prepare for interviews, and it's the next link. So I'll send another link here. But it's prepare for interviews, and it's the fourth option where it says Big Interview, and you click it, you log in with your EID and password. But again, it's all video based, so someone will be pre-recorded on the screen asking you a question. You can record yourself, rewatch it, re-record. So that's a really great tool to prepare for some of those automated video responses. What else? We have about 10 minutes left. What else are we thinking? And I still have 35 of you. Wow. No one's dropping off.
Andrew, I'll take another one.
Great.
This one for $5,000, please.
Oh, good.
Is it all important to, as you're moving through, getting ready to apply for jobs or in candidacy, to sort of refine your LinkedIn or ResearchGate profile beforehand? So in case, I don't know how much they look at it to see, are you worked with researchers that they're familiar with, or you've done things before? Is it good to sort of clean that up and make it more presentable beforehand?
I mean, I think yes, in the general sense of before you start going out and applying for any jobs, yes, absolutely, clean it up, get it ready to go. But honestly, it will be so exhausting to try to edit it for every job search and position, and you never know, like you submitted an application, but maybe they won't even look at it for another month or so. So you have no idea when to anticipate when this company or this university is going to be looking at it. So I would almost say that it's impossible / exhausting to try to do that. But like I said before you start the whole job search, absolutely get everything cleaned up. On your LinkedIn, make sure that your URL is a nice clean URL and not all the gumbly goop behind your name that a LinkedIn profile will set you up with. You can edit your personal URL for LinkedIn, so definitely do that. But yeah, that's what I would say about that. What else? I'm actually going to share one more link with you. I think it's this one. But in this time of when you're applying for lots and lots of different jobs, always keep track of the jobs, of when you applied, how you applied, copy and paste the job description in a document that you have access to. We can't always be reliant on that job description staying on their website all the way through when you might get an interview. And so I put a link in the chat, but it basically has a page where you can access a Google Sheet that you can save it as, but it's kind of already set up for jobs applied for, company name, dates, resume submitted, how'd you hear about it, status of the application, the website, comments. It's already set up for you. It's fantastic. So, use tools that are already there instead of trying to make your own, but definitely keep track of your applications that way or some way. Okay, that took 5 minutes. 5 minutes left, everyone. 5 minutes left. Any last questions? I guess I will just say, as we kind of end here, that like I said, I am always available to have an appointment with any of you to talk about anything related to career development, job searching, anything with that. Just a reminder to make an appointment with me via Handshake. Through the Handshake platform, you are able to schedule an appointment with me. And just so you know, all of our appointments for the rest of this semester until May are all going to be via Zoom. Even though I am physically back in the office, we are still going to maintain virtual appointments. So don't worry about that, whether you have the vaccine, whether, you're still hesitant of going public places, not a big deal because we can still all do it virtually. And so that's what it will be there. So make an appointment with me, love to talk. If you have more specific questions or have problems setting up an appointment with me, please send me an email, andrewcoles@ksu.edu. Just put that in the chat for everyone. But yeah, we can go from there. Any last questions right before we sign off? No?
All right, well, if there aren't any more questions, I'd like to thank Andrew for speaking today and providing great information on how to have a successful online interview. And so I'd also like to remind everyone to fill out the feedback survey that will be sent to your emails. Thank you.
Perfect. Always great to speak with you all. Take care. Have a great rest of your semester.